Welcome back, folks. Thanks for checking out part 2. What's love got to do with it? Got to do with it, got to do with it. It was a bad joke, I couldn't help myself. Okay, let's get started, or let's pick back up where we left off. Love is a many-splendored thing, Shakespeare says. It's also, I argue, not originally, I add. I'm just adding my voice to the small but growing chorus of voices that posits love is a cosmic waveform, equivalent to light, part of the same infinite fractal spectrum of cosmic forces or cosmic waveforms. I don't mean to sound droll or dry or bizarre about it, but light workers and healers and all that, they're onto something that they may or may not understand the mechanics of, that Einstein spelled out for us very clearly in his math. Matter is energy in such a slow and dense waveform harmonic that it makes up material things that appear and perceive as dense and with mass and all that stuff. The deeper we've looked into the substructure of matter, what we find is waveform, waves, string theory, quantum, all that nexus of the cutting edge theory. And I don't think it's been updated so much in the recent years that I have missed it, which I haven't been keeping super close tabs. But to the best of my knowledge, and I'm happy to go read some new physics stuff, some new papers, or listen to some new TED Talks, or whatever. But it indicates that matter is indeed, ultimately, comprised of a harmony, because it all interrelates and it sort of helps shape each other, itself, of undulating frequency of void, of something we can't measure. Curiously, that is supported by mystic descriptions of the veil undulating over the cosmic mind. Understanding that the entire material cosmos is a living being that operates this way with this duality, non-duality problem, or polemic. It's not really a problem, but it is a sort of dynamic interplay of opposing forces of living in this material realm and sort of also existing in another dimensional way that we can't quite perceive fully, and understanding that everything operates under that matrix, that structure, that actual, like, we can perceive it. That's the way it actually works. We're not just trying to describe it in a theoretical fashion any further. We're trying to measure and confirm that everything is energy. Then so are your thoughts, and so are your emotions, and so are your choices, and so is your body. in a way that when we take a step backwards and inwards deeply, we can sense this sort of trueness. We can detect it with our sensory apparatus and be sort of directly in tune with orchestrating the complex harmony being, converged upon, that is our moment, our present moment in life. People talk about being in the zone. Lovers talk about losing each other in each other's presence, or melting into each other's eyes, etc., etc. No need to get lurid. But this stuff is not just cheesy wordplay to impress. Arts, when they're the true arts, when an artist is being as in tune with his divine purpose as an artist, they speak truths in more intense ways than even the best of the philosophies. Especially when we start to see them all aggregate and converge, because we are a network species and all that. So, if the prophets were telling us, choose love, curiously, by the way, it's a very interesting thing. We were talking about, I constantly harp on the fact that language is important, because words are not just words, they magically convey image and context, and there's a reason why we develop language. There's also limitations and boundaries and things that mess with us because of language. Language is inherently ego trap ridden, because ego was right there in the process of developing language, because it wanted more control, and in order to achieve more control, it had to create or devise means by which it could divide the world down into smaller components. Control is all about division and trying to get down to some unit. The irony about the infinite fractal of the universe is that you cannot divide to a base unit with it. It goes on for infinity and folds back on itself in a trippy ass way that we don't know how to measure. That's why in science, I propose to you, as a philosopher who takes himself semi-seriously, but also with a big, huge grain of salt, mind you, I know that I probably have a lot to learn, because there's yoga masters and meditators out there that have been doing the hardcore work much harder than I have for a lot longer. They can probably sit me down and go, oh, okay, you're sniffing around the right trees. Now you need to know this, this, and this, because you haven't done it yet. And I haven't. I meditate a lot, and I've meditated enough in my life to tell you for a fact that you can perceive the frequency of love, and the frequency of fear, and the frequency of anger and hate. And you can sense them. There's much hubbub, and people are popularly aware of what is something that is being called a disorder, or a handicap of synesthesia, of having a kind of getting too much interference across of signals visually, so that our vision is interrupted and disrupted by bursts of color and or they try to simulate what it might look like whenever they talk about it in documentaries, and it's in several different documentaries for different reasons. And I propose that that synesthesia as a phenomenon is in fact evidence that our sensory apparatus is doing as much filtering away or out, shutting out of data and information that could be processed, in order to focus on the data specifically pertaining to the waveforms in this narrow bandwidth. We already know, in terms of popular science, that we only visually can perceive a certain limited percentage of what we know is out there that we can measure with scientific devices. I suggest to you that because it's a harmonic fractal, all of it, there's a multitude of chords worth of neighboring frequency languages that we could maybe figure out a way to detect and measure and perceive, and maybe directly phenomenologically interact with in some semi-meta constructed, not construed, like information, image, symbol language of some form. Just because I'm crazy enough to have read enough about all these sorts of things to go, yeah, that makes so much sense. I can put these pieces together and go, boom. And I tell you what, the first thing that all ancient mystic teachings kind of touch base on, and have to, in order to pass the bullshit meter test, is what they address, or how they address and describe love. Love like a finely tuned motorcycle. No, it's not really an analogy I wanted to make, but I thought I'd try to be funny there with that motorcycle interruption. Love, it can be, it has been said, sorry, too many thoughts at once. It has been said by individuals much wiser than this particular individual, that to love, to express and manifest and behave under the guidance of unconditional love, is to approach God. And I say that with sincerity and truth. As a person who's tried to be an atheist and failed, and I reach out to all my atheist friends, you're missing out on something, and you're willfully adhering to an ideological construct that you haven't fully questioned thoroughly enough. Because even Einstein believed in God, and even most people that you think are atheists ultimately believed in something. And science itself doesn't exclude God, doesn't exclude mysticism at all. It just hasn't been encouraged to investigate it. There is an undeniable unlocking of a perceptual gate, a perceptual filter, that requires self-healing, self-reconditioning, self-upgrading, self-manifesting. And the only way to guide a person, to communicate to another person, as someone who's been shown this, been taught this from various authorities, historical and otherwise, and then didn't just blindly accept it in theory or as a notion or as an ideology or as a belief construct, but said, okay, very well, I'm going to do what you've said can be done in order to, et cetera, and go at it with an honest, genuine attempt to encourage it to happen with, the promised effects or the promised results, in terms of it being sort of a mystical thing that had sort of mystical fruit to bear as a practice. And it was not easy. It was not easy, and I'm not done. Like any life process, it results that it just unfolds forever, as life can, for as long as it has the correct ingredients and the right energy to do so. Whether we get blocked by the notion of one body versus another body, life is not limited or bound by any individual one of the bodies that it manifests. Neither is love. Life and love are both forces in the universe that exist in ways that science has not yet to conceive of, to go chasing down a way to figure out how to measure it yet. An absence of science having done the investigation is not proof of it not existing, which is one of the social fallacies of non-science-y folks who cling a little too hard to science as proof of no deity or no divinity. I'll give it to you this in really clear terms. There is no deities. There are no deities. There is no superior being that imposes his will upon you, the individual Muppet, because you are it. See the distinction? There is divinity. There is the divine supreme one that is one, and all is one with it, especially love. The phenomena that we call God is itself the process or procedure of bursting forth love. Why all the eternal question, especially that is super common in the negative downward indoctrination of oppression in Christian varieties of Christianity, of non-denominational varieties rather of Christianity, is this this begging question of if God is love, then why does God allow horrible people to do horrible things? That is the riddle and the puzzle and the test of being us, the individual, and God. Understanding how to elevate ourselves into that unity while still living out in this flesh avatar, a normal, mundane flesh life, to live in that upward spiral towards ascension. Ascension being an end to this material realm in its fullest definition, mind you. I'm not talking about one guy being enlightened, although it's baby steps and it has to happen. And that perceptually, there are many, 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 many subgradients of procedural phenomena that contribute to that process. And no one is alone in wrestling with the question about whether or not this process is going on, because we are all one. We are all the one unity of unconditionally loving consciousness that is going for the joyride, the whoop-de-doo crazy. Why do people go to watch Rambo movies? Because it's a hoot when it's not happening to you. Well, God wants the ultimate hoot of it happening to God. And when one heals oneself, each of our avatars have suffered emotional, bodily, physical, and energetic trauma, because life by itself, in its bare bones biological sense, is hard, bordering on unsurvivable, right? It has to be. Keep the stakes high, makes the show watchable, makes the drama plausible, it makes the thrills, even the fundamental, like running around naked in the woods, it makes the thrills thrill-ier. And that's because it's a roller coaster. It's a ride. It's a lifetime, multi-lifetime simulator game for the entity, the living entity that is being it and being all the lifetimes and being all the molecules that required to construct up all the lifetimes. Love is one of its biggest ingredients, available at all times, in every place, in every moment. One can choose to activate love as an aspect of your tool set. And that sounds silly and ridiculous, but it's one of the few things that are bordering on absolutely true. And I don't like absolutes because this is a relativistic universe. But for a relativistic framework to exist, there must be some originating thing that approaches singularity, and singularity is absoluteness. Thus, the interesting self-referencing fractal irony of the cosmos. But an investigation into it will clearly reveal to you two really key ingredients. Perceptual choices in the mind of the perceiver of the physical realm interfere and therefore interpret the physical realm's behavior. The easiest to explain version of that, and I've pointed it out in one or two other episodes before, it's worth bringing back up again really quick. Light. You can understand that sunlight is energy. Can you understand that sunlight is also a physical particle, just like your coffee cup is made up of hard physical particles? What? That's confusing, right? Well, those hard physical particles really aren't hard, because at the bottom they're also just wavelengths, which can be light, considered light. The fun thing about light is that it is the fastest of all the energy / matter in our perceivable realm, given our current limitations perceptually. And it gives us a key to deeper spiritual comprehension. It being not at face value to be, given to be considered a living being, it can interact with us perceptually on many levels. When it changes and sets a mood in a room, it affects us emotionally in a way that's blissful when it's beautiful and it's uplifting. But that's just a sidebar sort of example. The hardcore scientific proof is that it can behave like a particle or a wave or some confusing combination of the two. And it all depends on what kind of question or which measuring tool you use to measure light. Okay, so why am I rambling about that? Light is energy, and it can palpably, physically demonstrate itself as particle as well, proving that E equals mc squared, the thesis put forth by Einstein, which, there's a lot of criticism and argument that it's not entirely whole yet, but it also continues to bear out and, sort of help other physics with its math on stuff. And I argue it can be sensed. It can be verified. E equals mc squared. Sunlight, light, organic real light, measurable, testable. It can behave both as physical materials, particles, or a kind of ethereal, dynamic wave that appears to travel through through stuff. And it relays information. You might at first not realize that you already sort of understand that, but, satellites and laser beams like CD players and, your TV are all dependent on the relaying of information on wavelengths and frequencies bordering on light. Love is one day going to be as measurable in a scientific way with some sort of scientific tool that conforms to the acceptability of, so that it becomes an undeniable thing that must be taught in schools. It will be identified and discovered and redefined as a very sophisticated, very nuanced, very interactive force in the universe. And the reason we all feel lost and disconnected and unloved and like finding love other than the immediate sort of automatic love of family and close friends is so hard is because we haven't been doing the required exercises to exude it and to luxuriate in all of us being transcendently and transplendently able of committing real, genuine, unconditional love broadcasting at all times. Like all things that are excellent and beautiful, they require practice. And I make no claims about how proficient I am in my practice. I'm making this project sort of on the notion of like, well, I've spent most of my life looking into this, hemming and hawing and being unsure about what I think about, but ever questioning and ever vigilant to be willing to update my assessment. I've just now realized I've concluded a certain number of things will be labeled as fact in the not too distant future, as long as we continue to diligently explore how to experience them and devise measuring tools by which we can scientifically measure them. I am sure, without doing a Google search, that I'm not the first person that has, wanted to write a book about how love can save the world. That just goes to show you the power of two things: free will and cynicism, dismissive brainwashing conditioning. Free will is something that we have in the cosmos. It itself is a power. All things that render a human a choice are like forces in the universe that render, that are forces, that are powers in the universe. And in choosing we interpret and or interact with those forces, and that's how we manifest the new experience of the path that we're on in life. As one physicist, or one set of the multiverse theory of physics, which may or may not be in vogue anymore, but some of its key ingredients still pan out as measurable and valid, and that's that if the perceiver is able to perceive both phenomena as rendered, and the universe can render that, then both are simultaneously occurring. And each of one of them will subsequently branch out. One of my favorite images that I stumbled across on the interwebs somewhere was a fractal heart tree. A trunk coming up from the symbolic ground, a heart at just the right, beautifully aesthetic place, branching out, and each lobe of the heart is a branch. And you see that each branch has consequences that branch out in their own path, independent of their brothers and sisters. And that each time you make a choice like that, in reality, for example, there's a version of me in a very proximate parallel universe membrane phenomena event right near here where I graduated college. There's probably a whole set, because each subset of trending choice measurable parameters would be a cluster of probability wave function form or ropes that are wound together because they contain the same central theme and then sub-variations. But the universe is constantly rendering that and all the subsequent branches forever and ever. It has infinite room to continue to do that. Why? And why am I talking about that in an episode about love? Because those branches don't just branch out, and they don't just react to the given moment that played out in the way we perceive our life. The entire fractal system of systems that I've just described is a living, breathing, endless cycle of cycles, of meta-cycles, upon meta-cycles, right? And love is one of the core ingredients or energies or frequencies that harmonically resonate throughout all the areas, all the nooks and crannies of the fractal, corridors. If you've seen any number of fractal zooms above 2, you know what I mean by the branching corridors that go off in places. We perceive our life while the universe is constantly unfolding all the alternatives, and we are perceiving those alternatives over there, in that avatar, in that bubble of universe. And all of these are all densely on top of each other in a sort of illusion of separation, but all sort of convergent. And the critical part I'm pointing out is that the branches can branch back together towards a new node of sort of new generation of fractal branching, starting from one line. That's one of the still hidden things about meditation. When you meditate in one lifetime, which could be in any direction along this infinite fractal chart of the different lives that you are living, you're contributing to sort of like a meditation pool of meditation time and meditation energy. The same is true of love. When you choose to exercise love above and beyond the indoctrinated limits of falling for the right cute guy or girl or whatever, and you practice it as a choice that you visualize, a choice that you project from your heart chakra. It's not that hard, folks. Love and wisdom are like a yin-yang thing, and they both emanate and are received through the heart. And each of the sacred divine processes associated with the different chakras are involved in the whole process, but you can, they're spread out and codified and interpreted in a fun way that really is helpful towards understanding how to focus on one or the other in particular. And the heart is an easy one. People ask, okay, so we're not going to sit down and meditate in front of an enemy about to kill us, right? Because we talked about that in episode 1, that's not entirely useful, although not a waste either, understanding what death is, which is a whole nother episode we're going to have to do. But coming back to that, the alternative is there is the wisdom that's been carried forth in Christian writing about, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It's about before it gets the conflict escalates, before you get to that level, you are choosing to live with a resonant frequency of love emanating from you. You don't know how to do that the way you don't know how to play the saxophone, only because you weren't raised with any kind of instruction on how to play the saxophone. And you weren't raised with very sophisticated instruction on how to choose to elevate your vibration. But I'll tell you what the really ridiculous secret, stupid secret is. The mind and the body and the apparatus, because birthright is ascension. Ascension is birthright. So is ego trap. It is our birthright. It is our God-given free will to ride that merry-go-round of suffering and death as hard and as long as we want. That's why we have people like Trump, whose personal lives in this individual sense, and probably cosmic, karmic lives in the multi-branching sense of that collective probability wave function of that energy pattern that is that soul, has probably been about choosing out of their own free will to keep riding that greed ride, keep riding that abusing other people's ride, the lack of love ride, because it's a fun. It has its delights, it has its pain and its suffering too, and to judge them and hate them for being that way does not heal them and does not heal you. Another piece of ancient wisdom that gets thrown around all the time, I think, and needs a little bit of deeper thought is, fighting for freedom and revolution and violence and all of that is like drinking poison and holding a hot coal in our hands, hoping the other person feels the burning pain inside and out. They're not. You are going to feel the burning pain inside and out. Curiously, though, love is the other way around. Broadcasting love at people heals you and them. Why would it be so? Why would broadcasting the negative thing be fake and broadcasting the healing thing be true? Because that's how the game works. That's how the game works. And we are beating our heads against the wall learning that lesson of choosing unconditional love and healing as a manifesting choice. Not just for me, not just for my profit, not just for my clients, or not just for you or my kid sister. And I don't mean in the impossible ways, but I mean in the important karmic spiritual ways that might actually, with enough global cumulative effort, transcend the boundaries of the material realm and then be able to manifest supposedly supernatural or impossible things. But what is the most common theme of human literature? You can't really do it on your own. The same is true about meditation. No matter how singular the act, you'll note that cultures that have a deep history with meditation, the meditators often do go into private little rooms that are dark by themselves to do deep, intense sensory deprivation meditation on occasion. But on the day-to-day, in the communal sense, waking up and living life together as a group of people that choose meditation as a primary ingredient in their lifestyle because it's important spiritually and for all time to, send harmonics in all the different directions. They do it in groups, together, in community. Love, never mind trying to decide whether or not you're going to meditate or you're going to choose to accept my thesis about meditation. Just love. Love is like snow. Okay? It is undeniable. Can you deny snow? No. If you are caught, exposed in the weather, you cannot deny the snow no matter how hard you try. The only way you can ignore the snow is inside a human construction, something we built that's dense enough and strong enough to block out Mother Nature. Think about that. Think about that really deep. And understand that love is like weather, like that powerful. It already exists throughout. And what we are doing, what we have been doing, what we have been conditioned and trained and oppressively caged in an invisible cage to accept and to do and to think is normal, is to block out nature, block out Mother Nature, block out each other's nature, block out the fundamental waveform of love as a cosmic thing, as a cosmic metastructure, a process, a force with agency in the universe. And thus we lack a lot of things that we might otherwise be experiencing. Luckily, it is easily resolved or turned around. The tide can turn because we still have free will and agency, and love has always been there. No one, no matter how much control they're exercising over you, no matter how bound up you are by the bad guy, because people will play the bad guy. Some of us will invariably be forced by time and circumstance to be in a war and be caged up like a brute. And no matter how much your freedom has been taken away, no one can stop you from choosing love. That's the important thing. We have been lied to, and then to believe that we can't do it at all. And that's the only way they've been able to coerce us into foregoing that activation, that choice, that manifestation. But it's a lie. It's a persistent lie that we carry forth in our postmodern traditions, but we can change it right now. That is the calling and the purpose of me rambling at some small growing audience, is to say, hey, if you already know this stuff and you know it's true and you already practice this stuff and you know it's true, join in the chorus of bringing this set of practices of verifiable. Let's turn this into a science, a cultural science, a personal, community, cultural science of broadcasting love. It's easy to reject it and say, oh, well, people will just sit in their living room and do nothing about helping others. But guess what? You know when you're bullshitting yourself. No matter what you do, you can't escape that, and you know it. Deep down, even the most fully bullshitted, somewhere deep down they know. And love heals. Even if you don't fully think you believe, practicing any kind of love meditation, in some cultures they call them metta meditations, M-E-T-A, unconditional love for a selected visualized group of people or all of humanity. When you do that as a prayer, and people, oh, prayer doesn't work. Of course it does. Everything's energy. What are you doing with your energy? You're focusing it. You're attenuating it. You are giving it form with words, and then you are broadcasting it. Like I'm broadcasting this podcast show. Except you're broadcasting it up towards, in truth, inwards, inverse upwards the spiral of ascension to those metastructures in this living organism we call the universe that have spiritual energetic agency and sometimes come out and visit and play and help people and stuff. And that shit is real, believe it or not. Belief and the absence of belief are funny things. The absence of belief does not suddenly render a true thing unreal. But belief in a false concept, an erroneous ideology, does tend towards encouraging the universe to try to manifest it. Because everything's an illusion anyways. Love is an illusion. I don't say that disrespectfully or sarcastically or jadedly. Many would misunderstand or overly identify with the assumption of a jaded, dismissive attitude behind a statement that says love is an illusion. What I'm saying is love is one of the core ingredients of this cosmic illusion fractal matrix that we live in. Tap into it. And the awesome thing that I'm trying to build to here or express is that you can go train, you can go do the research, you can go read all kinds of practices, you can go look up meditation right now, and in 20 minutes you can have an arsenal of tools from 5 different cultures, and you can be not sure whether or not it's going to do anything, and then you start trying them, and your body and your spirit and your mind will all do the following, regardless of which little recipe you choose to try. You'll be broadcasting the cosmic frequency of love because your body knows how to do that the way a plant knows how to face the sun. A seedling never needs to read a book about how to track the sun and grow its leaves and its fruit. Does it? It just does it. It just does. It just grows. So is the universe. What's tricky about our portion of the illusion and the way we manifest it is that we've built a bunch of lies into our culture that keep us apart from reconnecting to the part of us that already knows and already does. But that's why people have crafted recipes, meditation prescriptions, meditation styles. They're all interesting and awesome and will work to various degrees to various people, but they all should share the common ingredient either implicitly or explicitly, and that's the abdication of ego, the stepping aside from in front of oneself in order to allow oneself to truly access one's highest self. Love, unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness, and the questioning towards abdication of all ideological constructs. That means you don't need me to tell you what you can go do today, right now, tonight, right before bed. Pray and meditate. Believe it or not. Even if you don't believe in a specific God, pray to the highest order divine consciousness that's listening, wherever it is. And then sit in silence and listen to the response. And know that just by choosing to imagine or visualize or incant the idea that you are going to raise your being's energy vibration to match the frequency of love. You probably don't know the number, but just know that you can do it. Do that for 9 months and then tell me nothing happened. May peace, love, and goofiness be with you guys. Thanks for listening.